Welcome to Relationship, where real-life couple Justin and Candise share their keeping it real perspective on the ins and outs of their personal and professional experiences, navigating the ups and downs of partnerships in life and business. They will also offer practical advice for maintaining strong, healthy, fun, and successful relationships in life and business. If you're ready for comedic and insightful exploration of life, love, law, business, and everything else in between, you're in the right place. Buckle up, it's going to be a wild ride. Here are your hosts, Justin and Candise.
Everybody, welcome to another episode of Relationship. In today's episode, we have the privilege of hosting a dynamic duo whose love for aviation and unwavering commitment to education have made them true icons in the industry. Join us as we delve into the remarkable journey of John and Martha King, the co-chairman and co-owners of King Schools, Inc., and partners in life for nearly 58 years. Got a few years on us. Their innovative use of technology, coupled with their passion for teaching, has not only revolutionized flight training, but has also made aviation knowledge more accessible to countless pilots and maintenance technicians worldwide. Welcome to the show, guys. Thanks for being here.
Well, thanks. You can say things about us that we can't say. Thank you very much.
Your background looks fascinating, like ours, working together and as married partners. And we've got a lot of mutual concerns and joys, I think.
That's why, we really started the Relationship podcast, is that I think that, everything that I hear and read out there really talks about life, business, partnerships, whatever subject you're talking about, in such a general way. And I have such a thirst for knowing the nitty gritty, for always wanting to know the backstory and the things that I think that everybody else out there wants to know, but some people may not want to get as personal or as detailed. But, I've always been like that. Everybody calls me an old soul. So that's why we started this, because I want to always know the inner workings of anything and everything. And since we're partners in life and in business, that's how this relationship was born. I've read your bios, and I have to tell you, you guys have quite a lot of accomplishments behind you. We probably won't even get to touch the surface on all the remarkable accomplishments that both of you have behind you. But I want to get as much, to try to get as much of the stuff that I find fascinating and out there. And so I always want to start by asking, you guys you just said you've been together for 58 years, which I think is quite extraordinary. And so originally I was going to start with the question I always ask, which is, how did you guys start this business together? But since you guys have such a rich history together, both, personally and in business, let's go back in time and tell the audience how you guys met.
Well, I
story.
First dated Martha's sister, and I was rejected with the words, "You'd really like my sister." And so she introduced me to her sister. And she's right. I really did like her sister. And as our relationship grew, we decided we were going to be equal partners in everything we would do. And
we met in college. I was a freshman when we met. And we spent a lot of time walking around the campus talking about the future.
And I've been struggling to be an equal partner now for 58 years. And Martha's only a little bit smarter than I am, a little bit better pilot than I am, a little bit better teacher than I am. And I think that's the key to getting along with each other, is this mutual respect. But
let me ask you a question. I'm going to stop you right there, John, for 1 second. How long did it take for you to recognize all the things that you just said?
Was it
immediate?
Maybe, I don't know who that is. That's your phone. We turn maybe 2 dates. We went to an event at the university stadium, and we had lousy seats. And
what university?
Indiana University.
Okay.
And I can't remember what the event was, but we had lousy seats. And Martha says, and we were there with my mother and Martha and me. And Martha said to me, "I'll be right back." And about 5 minutes later, she came back. She says, come with me. I have better seats for us. And she had not complained. She had only offered a solution and got better seats. And I thought, this is someone I want to spend time with. She solves problems and makes things better. And it's been that way for 58 years now.
Now, John, if you can give me your cell phone number, I would love to have access to you so that my husband and partner can hear and possibly have some life coaching skills from you.
I'm 17 years in, and I'm still not fully getting that. So I'm learning. I'm a very slow learner. I'm a very slow learner.
All you have to do is take a look at our book, Lift, which is not only about our business, but about our relationship and how it developed and how we think we've managed to keep both a business partnership and a marriage partnership and a flying partnership, because we're both co-captains on the Falcon 10 we fly, and we're both flight instructors. And that's a challenging relationship also. But how we've managed to keep those, I would say, youthful and productive. And to boil it down to the nitty gritty, the two takeaways are respect and communication.
You pretty much answered 7 of my questions that I was going.
Well, she was a valedictorian in her high school.
Is a problem. She even knew what problems or questions I was going to ask before I even asked him. So I love it. I totally see that you are a problem solver, as am I. Because and I want to just say this because I love that we just kind of uncovered a lot in a very short time. But it's funny that you just said the really important buzzword, because Justin and I were talking about this the other day, and it's going to be discussed in one of our relationship posts. You know, it's a blog that we have where a lot of people, I feel like, shy away from conflict. But Justin and I look at conflict as just another opportunity to solve a problem. But everybody shies away from it because there's such a negative connotation to the concept of conflict. And so I really love the fact that you just, said what you did. But I do want to ask this question. When you guys got together 58 years ago, did you both realize, did you both independently have an interest and love for aviation? Or was that born out of the two of you being in a relationship together, and then that you both realized together that was a passion of yours?
Well, the aviation came later. We went bankrupt in our first business.
What was the first business?
The first business was a lubrication service for truck fleets. And we didn't particularly have any passion for it at all. And if you don't have a passion for something, you don't persist through difficulty and hard times, and you don't put the effort in to make it work over a long period of time. And that's where we were. And we were trying for what we were swinging for the fences. We wanted to be really wealthy. We wanted to be really big time operators. And we said, well, that hurt. Let's not do that anymore after we went bankrupt. And by the way, we didn't blame each other. We just simply readjusted our lives and went on from there. And we said, well, this time let's do something for the fun of it. And at that time we had started flying for the fun of it. And we said, well, let's teach ground schools for pilots. That's something we can do. And we had a passion for that. And so we said, let's do something that we have a passion for. And we were willing to persist in that business and work hard at it and endure through difficulties and so on. So it's the having a passion, I think, was a big key for us. And we enjoy this business together, and we enjoy each other because.
Since you have the benefit of your past, which was, a failed business that you guys initially started, with what you have now, which has exploded, and you guys are extremely notable in the aviation community, really in the world, and you are highly decorated and recognized in that industry. What, in addition to the lack of passion that you said that you didn't have for that first lubrication business, what other things would you attribute to the failure, but that you see is the secret sauce to the success that you guys have now?
Well, one of the big things that we decided looking back on it, was that we had defective goal setting. We had set a goal of having 50 franchises. We were franchising this oil and lubrication business, and our goal was 50 franchises all over the country because we felt like that would make us big time and that would be, really fabulous. But we forgot one very important word, and that was profitable. So we were focused on being big, but we were not focused on being profitable. And after the bankruptcy, as we looked back on it and thought about starting the ground school teaching for pilots, which is what we started with, live classes that grew into the full King schools, we looked back on it and said, failure is wasted if you don't take responsibility for it. So we sat and analyzed, and we had defective goal setting. We had not, because we were young and naive when we started the business, we had not structured the business properly. Our fault. Not the franchisees. And we were in a business, the oil and lubrication business, that although there was a niche there, it was basically a commodity business, and it wasn't something that you could command premium prices for. And our goal when we got into the ground school business was to deliver a training course, I'd guess you say, but teaching in such a personal and competent way that nobody could imitate us.
One of the things that went from the bankruptcy, we didn't have recriminations. We made an effort to learn from it, and we didn't blame each other. We didn't make excuses. We just felt
right.
Had to understand what we did wrong and learn from that. And I think that's one of the things that we did together.
And I think that's really interesting that you said that. You have so many people these days talking about goals, and you need to write your goals down. And whether they're realistic or not realistic, just write your goals. But you talked about you had defective goals. And I think it's important for people to know when you have goals, and it's always been my opinion, the goals have to, one, be somewhat realistic. And I guess I've learned from you now that the goals just can't be goals that you just think about. They actually have to be real practical goals that actually work. They can't just be.
One of our sayings is be careful what you wish for. You might get it. And
100%.
You have to wish for the right things. And when we set our goals in this business, King Schools, we set goals of income and lifestyle, and at the time we set them, we didn't know how we were going to accomplish them, but we did set them with a firm eye to profitability, that because not being profitable in the previous business put us in bankruptcy. And as John says, that hurt, and we didn't want to do that again.
Right.
We had a goal-setting session in the new business, and I remember we were sitting down and writing things out and so on. And I remember telling Martha that I had this dream of a financial goal, and Martha started crying. And I said, "What are you crying about?" She says, "Well, I'm not sure I can guarantee you that." And we're now making about 100 times what that goal was, that she was crying, that Martha felt it was her responsibility to guarantee me that result. And that's, I think, a part of the deal is we're both working hard to do the best for each other that we can.
I love that. But I want to, as I already laid the preface for it earlier on, I always want to know even more, on a more granular level. So you had just described, having learned some mistakes that you learned with your first business, and you started the new business with a goal setting session. But, for all of the folks out there that read all these books, books written by Napoleon Hill and all the other greats out there. And I've read them too. And I have to tell you, as a lawyer that has, who has to read for a living, I freaking hate reading. But I went through the motions and I read all these books, and that, and it was part of the reason, again, why we started this, is I said, I don't get what they're saying. talk to me like I'm a 6-year-old. Tell me step one, this is what it involves. Don't give me these generalities of being positive and, and write down your goals and make them like I think a lot of, excuse my language, it's not that it's horseshit, but it doesn't really, tell me as the person who's starting a business, real practical things that needs to be done. So I want you to really break it down in a more granular level. So you sit down, you start a business and you say, shit, we just had a failed business. We're now going for passion. We don't know, what's going to happen. We're sitting down in a goal setting session. We need to be realistic on our goals because we had the wrong goals before. What else? Give me the mechanics. Now that you've built this extremely successful business, in the beginning, what else are you doing? Like what tell me from the day-to-day, moment to moment of, and try to juxtapose it to your failed business. Like, tell me what's going on through your head and your actions on a day-to-day basis.
After our failed business, because of our passion in flying, we went to work for another company called Ross Ground Schools that was doing what we ended up doing on our own. And we worked for them for about 4 months before they went bankrupt. And they went bankrupt for the same reason we had, defective goal setting. They wanted to have 10 teams of instructors out teaching the 2-day weekend ground school classes around the country. That's real easy to do. You just hire a lot of people. Finding profitable locations to teach those classes is a different ballgame. So when they went broke, we looked at each other and said, well, we have 4 months experience. We know where their good cities were and their bad cities were not. We think we can draw some characteristics out of that. And we used that information to sit down and draw up a plan about where we would teach the ground schools, which was mostly rural areas with quite a bit of distance, but money in terms of big ranchers, big farmers, people like that, who needed to get around the state and the country, and found personal aviation to be a really big help on doing that.
Along the same lines, one of the things that we figured out is you have to be able to sell something to somebody. You have to do something for people that they will be willing to pay for. So there's 3 groups of people to serve as an entrepreneur. One is your customers. You have to figure out something that they will be willing to pay for, that you can do for them. And we were good teachers and people were willing to pay for it. And that worked out well for us. Second thing is, if you have people working for you, they're devoting their lives to your efforts. So you have to take care of their needs. And then the third is you have to take care of the needs of your vendors. But believe it or not, it's important that you take care of the needs of your vendors because they'll stick with you through hard times if you're taking care of them. If we have an example now, paper is very hard to get, and we have a catalog. And our vendor came to us and said, you have really been good with us, and we're going to make sure that you get the paper before other people do. So we're going to stay with you, and you'll be in business and stay in business because of it. And it's counterintuitive. You take care of your vendors' needs, but you take care of all 3 of those groups. You take care of your customers and do something that they're willing to pay you for. You take care of your employees because they're devoting their lives to you, and you take care of your vendors.
Oh, I love that. The vendor part is something that I never thought of, and I never heard anybody else talk about. So I appreciate that.
Actually. Yeah. So the secret of entrepreneurship is you seek out and take care of other people's needs. And if you do things for other people, they'll stick with you and they'll pay you. And so you have to figure out what you can do for people. Martha doesn't like me to say this, but when I see homeless people, I see, well, that's too bad. They don't have something that people will pay them for. And so if you've got something that people will pay you for, you don't have to worry about being homeless.
The other thing is that a lot of people start out into a business and the first thing they focus on is getting a location or getting equipment, trucks, whatever. That's what we did when we did our first oil and lubrication business. But one of the things that we decided looking back at our failed business was, what is the proper definition of a business? And to us, it's not a building, it's not trucks, it's not even necessarily the employees. It's the identification of a customer want or need that you can fulfill profitably. And so that's really the very first place for someone to start when they're looking to start a business. Have you identified a customer want or need that you can fulfill? And don't forget the word profitably, because otherwise you don't have a business.
Right. And I'm going to add to that, because we are in a service industry of delivering the value or something that somebody wants with intention, with care, with intention, not just checking the boxes and going through the motions, because you could be a great salesperson and you could get all the clients in the world, but if you can't sustain that because there's no real intention or passion or care, and it's just the profitability, then I don't know that, would you agree that might not be sustaining in and of itself?
Yeah, the key is seeking out and taking care of other people's needs.
Right.
And if you are good at that, you've got something that will sustain.
And this is where, as you mentioned, the whole idea of the passion comes in, because if you're passionate about an area, you're going to know a lot about it. You're going to experience it in the same way your prospective customer is, and you'll see the areas where there's a need, where there's something that a service or a product that you could provide that other people really need, and you can see that because you're elbow deep in it, if you will, and just immersed in it, even if at all times of the day and night and weekends and so on, because it's your passion.
Yeah. And that also creates pride. If you're passionate about something, you're prideful about it. And if you're prideful about it, then you're going to give it everything you got, because it's like a baby. It's like your little baby.
And you need to be passionate about it when you're starting your own business, because it's not easy. I mean, you all know that. And there are really great times and there's some really hard times. And if you're not passionate about it, you're going to have a strong desire to give up when the hard times come, as they will come. And the passion helps sustain you through the tough times, but it also helps you follow the trends in the marketplace. We started out doing live classes. We went eventually to VHS tape. Some people still remember what VHS tape was.
I do.
Be kind, please rewind.
Right. Please rewind. Remember the Blockbuster,
Absolutely. And from there, though, as technology changed, we went to disc courses and then to online-based courses, and then pulling them offline onto tablets, iPads, and so on. And because of the passion, we stayed on top of the technology and tried actually to stay ahead of it. But if you're not passionate, we had a friend who owned a company that built radios and other electronic equipment for airplanes, but he felt kind of distantly about it. He didn't put his own equipment in his own airplane. He missed a lot of the coming trends like GPS, which is in aviation every bit as much as it is in your car and in your phone. He missed stuff like that because he wasn't passionate enough about what his company was doing to stay really immersed in it.
And he wasn't rolling up his sleeves and getting in it.
Right, right.
Well, I want to ask you this, though. I'm assuming that there are other type of aviation courses and schools out there. And I'm going to also assume this, whether I'm assuming correctly or not, that you guys know what the competition or what's out there, as you were able to point out, with a friend of yours that just didn't stay on top of certain things. And therefore something as simple as, the technology of GPS was, he missed it. What would you say, other than we talked about the fact that you are fully immersed and passionate about it, but what would you characterize as, let's say your top 2 or 3 characteristics about your King school, your school, that is different than everybody else's? What sets you apart from your competition?
People ask us why 58 years later we're still eating regularly. And we say there's 2 reasons. One, we're designed to seek out and take care of other people's needs. And you don't know if you're taking care of other people's needs unless you solicit and are responsive to feedback. So every contact we have with a customer, we solicit their feedback and are responsive to their feedback. And I think that's the key for us still being in business. And then the second thing is that we're responsive to changes in technology. There have been tremendous changes in technology and communications. This is an example right now as a change in technology. And so we're responsive to changes in technology, and that's let us implement the results of our customer feedback. So those are the 2 things. Seek out and take care of other people's needs, and to know you're doing that, you have to solicit and be responsive to customer feedback.
Well, what I think sets us apart from our competition and makes us, I don't like to use the word unique, that's pretty overworked, but different, is our company motto, which is that we take relatively complicated material, we clarify it, simplify it, and most important, we make it fun so that the learning is easy, fast, but thorough and fun as it goes along. So, the more fun people have when they're working on learning something, the more likely they are to remember it and to actually be able to use it in real life.
I know that firsthand because I have an 11-year-old. We have an 11-year-old son who refuses to learn anything unless it's accompanied by some sort of fun. Yeah. So that has been, you can imagine, challenging because we do run a law firm together. So. Right.
He gets that from me. I like to have fun while learning as well.
We both like to have
so
a lot of fun. I want to, because, I could really, just reading your bios and just having talked to you thus far, I could talk to you for the next several hours, but I do have to kind of, manage my time. But I want to get serious for a moment and take a little turn because you happen to be talking to one of the most fearful flyers in the world. And I have flown since I was 7 years old. I'm from Taiwan originally. So I've flown long distances. I've flown a lot of different types of equipment, except for helicopter. You will never get me to use You will never get me to use a parachute. You will never get me to go on a helicopter. Forget a blimp. Or hot air balloon. So just in working within the confines of a regular airplane, have you had a lot of people come through your school or taken your courses that had as big of a fear of flying as I do? And were you able to, and if you were able to alleviate their fear, what would you attribute to whatever it is that you said or did that made them no longer fearful in flying?
Sometimes people do, for whatever reason, want to learn to fly, even though they're very afraid of flying. And the one big thing that, in our opinion, cures them of the fear is showing them how they can be in control. Because everybody, some more than others, dislikes not feeling like they're in control of their life, of their circumstances, of what's happening to them. And if they can stick with it long enough to understand that they're actually learning to be in control of the vehicle they're riding in, and to understand what affects it, why it makes the motions and the noises that it does, but how this learning pilot can actually tell it what to do and have it do it and be in control of that. That's what normally gets rid of the fear.
And fear of flying is a reasonable thing. You have to get a lethal speed just to get airborne. And then you fly thousands of feet in the air. It's just you understand that there are risks associated with this, and there are.
Right.
And so we spend a lot of time focusing on helping people identify and mitigate risks. And that's what it's all about.
But that brings me, that brings me to then my next question. And Martha, I don't want you to forget what you were just about to say, but I don't want to forget to ask this because, I'm extremely impressionable, and every one of my fears, which I have a lot, are all from watching the news. And it almost seems like there are more, like you see even with the military. I mean, how just in the last 2 to 3 weeks, how many news stories have we heard
of helicopter crashes, of the military folks out there? And I'm like, why does it seem like every other day I'm what is happening? From understanding the mechanics, also flying helicopters, and I'm just talking about helicopters right now. What is going on? Why have there been so many recent accidents especially in the military, with helicopters?
Well, you'll be interested to know Martha is a helicopter instructor.
I know, I read that. That's why I'm asking that question. I'm like, okay, you're going to tell me. You're going to lay it out for me.
First of all, the military aspect of it is kind of a special category because of what they're training to do. They're training to do things like there was a retrospective on CNN yesterday about the raid where they captured and killed Osama bin Laden. This is the kind of thing the military is training to do with their helicopters, with a lot of night flying and low terrain operations, low altitude flying. So that's kind of a special category. There is always some risk when you're flying, but especially when you're training to do new things or difficult and challenging things. So the military is working on that, obviously, with their stand downs and their checking on safety measures. Do you have a
risk management is always a trade-off between accomplishing what you set out to do and mitigating risks. And the military is in a very difficult situation. They're accomplishing very extraordinary things, and there are going to be risks associated with those things. And it's where you strike the balance. The military is going to strike the balance in a different place than some civilian operation. And you as the pilot know that you're striking a balance.
To circle back to what I started to say earlier, when somebody asks us about learning to fly, we never, ever say, John and I, oh, it's perfectly safe, because it's not perfectly safe. And any reasonable person like you understands it's not perfectly safe. What we say instead is there are risks that are manageable. And the whole purpose of flight training is to educate you and get you in the habit and practice of identifying and managing those risks. And some of the people that we know that have started flying and then stopped have told us that they stopped because they knew, obviously, that there were risks in flying and did not feel that their instructor or flight school was being helpful in identifying how to manage those, and was just basically saying, oh, don't worry about it, which is not a good way to go. And
I am worrying about it.
Right, exactly. And any endeavor where you take a motorized vehicle, particularly if you take it airborne, is going to have risks that have to be identified and managed. If you scuba dive, you get a whole bunch of information and training about the risks of scuba diving, possibility of the bends, how you avoid it, what you do about currents, lots of stuff to manage the risk. And that's what flight training does. The military does it at a much more challenging level.
Got it.
One of the frequent things that people say that actually offend us is that the Secretary of Transportation or the administrator of the FAA will come out after an accident and say, safety is our number one priority. And the answer is no, it's not, because it's always safer to stay put. A boat is safest in a harbor, but it's not what a boat is built for. So if you stayed in the harbor, it'd be perfectly safe. But if you move the boat, it's not as safe as it would be if you were in the harbor. Same way with an airplane. If you fly an airplane, safety is not your number one priority. Obviously, you wanted to move the airplane, and that added risk to it. So it's disingenuous and incorrect to say that safety is our number one priority, or to say that there can be no compromise with safety. Of course, there's compromise with safety. You can't start an engine without compromising safety. And so
let me ask you a question, John. So if you were their spokesperson, their PR person, what should they change it to?
Well, I think what you would say is it's our job to understand this and to seek out and take care of the risks and to mitigate them. And to
learn or teach, depending on our position in the industry, the tools. And there are a lot of tools that have been developed and are still being developed to mitigate the risk in aviation.
But you don't ever want to tell people there are no risks and we're going to be perfectly safe, because safety is our number one priority. Well, horse feathers. Safety is not your number one priority. You start in an engine.
Right. 100%. I want to, we're running up on the time, but I want to ask you guys, you've, just in hearing you right now, it seems like you guys just have such a zest for life and adventure, and you guys have done so much together, and you've built this successful business. What's next?
Well,
is there something else of all of the stuff that you guys have and that you've accomplished? And I can't imagine that you can accomplish anything more, because you guys have accomplished so much. What is the next chapter, or what is the continuing chapter, or what is there that you have wanted to do that you haven't done yet, given that the two of you have pretty much done anything and everything, including the most risky of all adventures and, hobbies and death-defying, things in life? I mean, what else?
Well, the business has been very, very good to us in that, as you say, we have accomplished most of the things that we have dreamed about, that have been on our bucket list, and so on. Things like trips to Antarctica, flying around the world. A lot of our bucket list items were associated with aviation, but we don't really have a big bucket item still to go, because the business has allowed us to do those as we go along, and we haven't had to put stuff off until we can retire or whatever. We've had enough free time and enough money from the business to go ahead and, I don't know if you'd say indulge ourselves, but satisfy most of those bucket list items as we.
Well, you do fly a Falcon 10, so
yes,
that's quite an extraordinary perk that you have as in the successful business that you guys have built together.
I think the key to our eating regularly and being successful really is that we have a partnership. And when we started out teaching ground schools, we had Martha in one classroom teaching the instrument instructor, and me in another classroom teaching private, commercial, and flight instructor. And the fact that we had each of us doing it meant that when we came along the video, we were each good at it, and it made us people see us as a couple, and that's very, very unusual, and that's given us a lot of attention.
But that's us too. So I love that you just said that, because you guys have really inspired me and Justin in so many ways, just in the 47 minutes that we've been talking. There's not enough hours in the day. We actually have another podcast starting in 12 minutes. So I'm so bummed, but if you would indulge me, I would love to have you guys on our podcast again, because this conversation is definitely not over. I would love to continue talking to you too.
I enjoy that.
Thank you so much for what you've shared thus far. I'm not going to say goodbye, because I really want to talk to you guys again. So until next time, but just as a selfish plug, please tell everybody where they can find you should they wish to take one of your courses or anything else that you guys have to offer. Give us a website for the audience to have.
Okay, our website is King Schools, all one word with an S on the end of schools.com. And we have a whole bunch of free courses on our homepage that people can take to see what our teaching is like and to learn fun segments about aviation and just kind of get the feel for it.
I love it. I love it. I love talking to you guys. Thank you so much for being on our podcast. I have to run to the restroom before our next podcast because my bladder is about to explode. So lovely to meet you. Until next time. And thank you for everything. So much.
Thank you.
That's a wrap for this week's episode. Don't miss next week's episode for more relatable, real, and practical insights from relationship, packed with even more candid conversations. So make sure to subscribe, tune in, and keep your wine glass full. And if you want to share your own experience or ask a question, follow us on social media and feel free to reach out. Go to CernitzLaw.com, call 888-68-DAMAGE, or email us at cshanbron@CernitzLaw.com or jcernitz@CernitzLaw.com.